Okay, Boker Tov, and I recognize that as it is Mother's Day today, many of you might be busy out there, hopefully, with your kids and grandkids. But as I have found that while some listen to the class while it's given live, Baruch Hashem, thank God, we are honored that many of you listen throughout the course of the week. So I'm hoping and I'm certain that some of you, although not listening, hearing the class right now live, will be hearing it throughout the week. And of course, I thought that last week's discussion of freedom of speech with the purchase of Twitter by Elon Musk was a passionate issue. Of course, this week, as we can never predict the news and what's going to happen, we have the issue of Roe versus Wade and abortion that has made it to the top of the news, and of course a very, very passionate, understandably so, very passionate issue. That has been a passionate issue in this country for many, many years. And of course now with the leak of the Supreme Court apparent future ruling, this has become a very passionate issue in the country. So we want to address that. First, let's begin with a bracha. We're going to say the bracha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvarei. Yeah, I hope you answered Amen, or you are sitting with your own coffee. Now, oh, thank you for that Amen. Thank you. So, when dealing with issues that are highly passionate and dealing with issues that are truly of sensitive matter, one needs to be a bit extra careful. You could have two approaches: to say the truth in its purity and straight to the point, and that's it, and say the truth, or do you act a little bit more sensitively in how you present that truth? Of course, a non-truth should never be discussed or presented, because it's not true. But should it be said with more sensitivity? And generally speaking, I definitely take the latter approach. And there is a lot of sensitivity issue over here, but yet at the same time, I do want to convey the Torah's thoughts on this issue. And I want to make a couple of things clear. And I know some of this introduction might take a little time from the actual subject matter, but nevertheless, it's important to make this clear. That there are, first and foremost, the discussion we're going to have today is not a halachic ruling. It's not a rule. This is discussion. I want to educate the listeners on some of the issues. Some of the nuances definitely have different opinions within Jewish law, including what we call modern poskim, modern Jewish codifiers. So that's introduction number one. That I'm going to give you some of the issues that are discussed as it relates to this subject. Number two, so therefore it's not a halachic ruling. Issue number two is that we also need to always make the distinction or two separate conversations between right and wrong, and what is the government's responsibility to enforce. So to give an example, it is, as we spoke last week, it is forbidden to speak lashon hara. It is forbidden to speak negative talk. It is forbidden to slander. Does that mean that government should mandate lashon hara, prohibition to slander? That's a separate discussion. There are certain moral issues and decisions that the Torah directs us. That does not mean that the court or the secular court, and so on, should get involved. So these are separate discussions, and therefore we have to remember that as well in this context. Okay, so having said that, I want to provide a sort of a little bit of meat to this discussion of what are some of the halachic issues and the sources in the Torah as it pertains to abortion and how it applies, because in the Talmud and in the Torah we seem to have opposing approaches, as I will mention. Okay, I will mention some of the verses and some of the Talmudic discussions around these verses. L'chaim, l'chaim. So the first verse that in the Torah that is mentioned is the verse, let me bring it up over here. The first verse that is mentioned is in Genesis, and the verse says the following. I'm going to read it in the Hebrew first and then in the English. Shofech dam ha'adam ba'adam, damo yishafech ki b'tzelem Elokim asa et ha'adam. Translation, which I have here up on my screen. Whoever sheds human blood by human hands shall that one's blood be shed, for in the image of God was humankind made. However, the English doesn't give us a literal translation. The actual literal translation of this word, shofech dam ha'adam be'adam, means literally a person who sheds the blood of an adam, of a person, ba'adam, within a person. And the Talmud in Sanhedrin translates this to mean that you're shedding the blood of a human when it's in a person, meaning while it's in the mother's womb. And therefore the Talmud in Sanhedrin says, let's see if I actually have the language of the Talmud in Sanhedrin. Bear with me a moment. I probably do. Just give me a moment over here. All these sources today can be found both in Hebrew and English on the internet. A minute. Hold on. Okay, I don't want to take up your time over here, but it's basically a Talmud in Tractate Sanhedrin, and here it is. Okay, here's it. No, this is not it. This is not that. This is a different tractate in Sanhedrin. Here we go. It is stated in that book of Agadot that the sages said in the name of Rabbi Yishmael. So he says like this. Rabbi Yishmael says that it is derived from that which is written, one who sheds the blood of a person by a person, which is one translation of ba'adam, by a person. But the word ba'adam literally means in a person, and it is interpreted homiletically. This is what the Gemara says, but the Gemara, this is homiletically, is not the Gemara. This is whoever's explaining the Gemara. The Talmud says, what is a person that is in a person? You must say this is a fetus that is in the mother's womb. So from here, this verse, if taken this interpretation, shofech dam ha'adam be'adam, one who sheds the blood of a person within a person, Rabbi Yishmael tells us that this refers to the blood of a fetus. Now, if you take this verse, it tells us, and damo yishafech, it's akin to murder. So this verse tells us that it is murder to go ahead and if you kill a fetus. That's one verse. There is another verse. The other verse is the following verse. Let me read it as well. And this is the other verse that is brought down in Jewish sources, which is V'chiyah. Now this is from Exodus. This is Exodus in Parshat Mishpatim. Okay? So here it says the following. V'chiyanatzu anashim. I'm reading the Hebrew and then we shall translate. V'nakfu isha hara v'yotzu yeladeha v'lo yiyeh ason anosh ya'anosh kasher yashis alav balaish v'nasan biflilim. I will translate. When two or more parties fight and one of them pushes a pregnant woman and a miscarriage results, but no other damage ensues, the one responsible shall be fined according as the woman's husband may exact a payment to be based on reckoning. Here the Torah tells us in Parshat Mishpatim that if two men are fighting and one goes ahead and accidentally kills the fetus within a pregnant woman, he pays. In other words, usually for killing somebody, if you do it intentionally, you get capital punishment if there's witnesses and etc. if certain conditions are met. If you do so accidentally, then you would have to go into exile, into the city of refuge. Here the Torah says merely there's no hint of murder. Here the Torah tells us, this is again in the Bible, in Chumash, in Shmos, here the Torah tells us the punishment is to be paid. So these two verses seemingly contradict each other. How do we resolve these two contradictions? And here we refer to like whenever you have sometimes contradictions in the Torah, you have to go to later commentaries and Mefarshim and so on. And before I resolve this, I want to bring up another couple of issues as it pertains to our conversation, which again seems to have perhaps some conflicts or some contradictions. And if this is too complicated, bear with me. There will be some further discussion and where you could sort of latch on. If you need to fall asleep a bit, that's also good. It's not so terrible. Your soul listens while the rabbi is talking Torah, and you get a little schluff. Nicht gefährlich, as we say in Yiddish. Not terrible. Okay. So, there is. I want to try to be as clear as possible. You know, I spent quite a bit of time searching and learning up until the class. So there's still a lot more that can be learned, and of course there's limited of what you could place within 45 minutes or so on. But we do find various distinctions and stages with regards to Jewish law of when abortion would be permitted, when abortion would be forbidden. So I want to give the stages that we find in halacha, in Jewish law, and what it is based on, and how the rulings of some parties, because again there are various rulings on this issue. And I do suggest that you bear with me until the end when we try to make it clear, so that there's no misunderstanding from some of the statements that I'm saying, because this is really very, very important issues. So in the halachic discussion, we find various stages. We find the stage of what we would even call pre-embryonic stage, which is used, let's say, for IVF and for some, which relates also to stem cell research, where, without getting into the technical terms, where an embryo is created through the process of IVF, which is used both for assisting in childbirth and also for stem cell research. That's one stage, which means the stage where it's even not yet inserted into the womb. That has come up in halachic discussion and questions. We find a stage of the first 72 hours. We find a stage of what happens after it's implanted within the womb of the woman. We find a stage, halachic implications of the stage of up to 40 days, which is a stage that's discussed in halacha, and I will explain that. I will try to explain each of these. We find a stage as it relates to once the child is considered viable, which is usually referred to as the third trimester, or 7 months, which today medically has perhaps changed because of development and the ability to save a fetus even at an earlier stage. And then we find a stage of once the actual birth, labor begins, or more to say, once actually birth begins. We find a difference in all these stages, and I want to give a little discussion on all these stages. Before I do that, I also want to read, bear with me over here, I want to read a statement that the OU, the Orthodox Union, put out, I think right before Shabbos. They put out this stage, and I want to try to explain it within the context of the discussion that we're going to have. So here I'm reading this from the OU. You could see it. It's the Orthodox Union. Many of you know, I'm sure almost most of you know, the OU kashrus symbol. They also have sort of a communal wing, where they address different or department where they address different issues. So the Orthodox Union put out the following statement. The Orthodox Union is unable to either mourn or celebrate the news reports of the U.S. Supreme Court's likely overturning of Roe versus Wade. We cannot support absolute bans on abortion at any time point in the pregnancy that would not allow access to abortion in life-saving conditions. Similarly, we cannot support legislation that permits abortion on demand at any point in time in pregnancy, and does not confine abortion to situations which medical professionals, including mental health, medical professionals affirm that carrying their pregnancy to term poses real risk to the life of the mother. This is a statement by the Orthodox Union. Again, as people of faith, we see life as a precious gift granted us and maintained within us by Hashem. Jewish law places prominent value on choosing life and mandates not as a right but as a responsibility, safeguarding our own lives and the lives of others by behaving in a healthy and secure manner, doing everything in our power to save lives and refraining from endangering others. This concern for even potential life, listen to that words, potential life, extends to the unborn fetus and to the terminally ill. So this is part of the statement. And there's so much to discuss it, I don't even know where to start. So let's discuss the various stages. And I want to explain that so that you can learn a little Torah, which is the objective over here. All the political opinions about this that's not what you're coming here for, as I say many times. There are plenty of talk shows on the right and on the left that you could hear all these discussions. Let's talk about what is the status of the fetus in general terms, because we have somewhat conflicting statements both in the Talmud. The consensus, and not by all opinions, but what seems to be the consensus, is that a fetus is not considered a full life; it's considered a potential life. That's what seems to be the halachic consensus. And I say that again with with some hesitation, because that's not agreed upon by all. There are nuances that could schlep it in different directions, in either direction. But that seems to be the consensus. That's as a general statement. And as such, there is no question that abortion is prohibited by Jewish law. There's no question. Are there exceptions? So, as a general statement, yes, there are exceptions. The exceptions are when the mother's life is in danger. When the mother's life is in danger, that is a clear exception accepted in halacha by all, that if the mother's life is in danger. And some extend that also to sort of mental health, serious mental health, that in that case, abortion would be allowed. Those are sort of general statements without getting to different periods within the development of the fetus. Now, what happens in cases where the mother's life is not in danger? And we spoke about various stages. So here there is a halacha. Let's teach you a halacha, a law, an interesting law, that if somebody there's a law that's in the Talmud, and the law is the following: that if a mother, if tragically a mom dies, and she has a fetus she's carrying, she's pregnant, the law is that you do what needs to be done to save the baby even on Shabbat, although it is a violation of Shabbat. Some of the things that are done in order to save the fetus would be clearly within the biblical violations of Shabbat. We save the life of the child in order to, even though we are violating Shabbat. And that is a discussion that's mentioned in the Mishnah, in the Gemara, in Masechtas Ahalos, I think it is. And over there, we see clearly that the fetus is something that's a living thing, because we only violate Shabbat when it comes to saving a life. Now, some make clearly the distinction and say that the Ramban, for example, says that the reason why we violate the Shabbat, that for the fetus, it does not tell us that the fetus is totally a living thing akin to sort of murder. The Ramban, Nachmanides, says that the reason for that is because by saving this fetus, you are going to, there's a concept in the Talmud that says, Chalel Shalov Shabbos Achaz Kadei Sheyishmer Harbe Shabbosis. Violate one Shabbos in order to keep many Shabboses. This fetus, who will eventually live, will observe many Shabboses. So it is worthy, it's worthwhile, it's to go ahead and to violate one Shabbos in order for him to observe many Shabboses. So that's what Nachmanides says. Others say that the reason for that is because, again, it's a potential life, and as a potential life, you could go ahead and violate Shabbat. It doesn't have to be a full viable life. The reason for that distinction is because if the child would be considered a full life, then why would we allow abortion to take place when the mother's life is in danger? Who is to say that the mother's life is more important than the child? In fact, I believe that in some of the other religions, we actually save the baby's life, even takes precedent even over the mother's life. In Judaism, that's not the case. Judaism clearly states, for various reasons, and again, it's not the time, it's not, to discuss all the intricacies of the law. I just want to give you some of the thoughts to understand what's going on over here. But in Judaism, it's clear that the mother's life takes precedent over the baby's life. So that is one of the reasons why many conclude that it's more a potential life than an actual full life, which is why the mother's life takes precedence when the mother's life is in danger. Now, another distinction, an interesting distinction with regards to prior to 40 days versus after 40 days. And the basis for 40 days is because the Talmud, in various discussions, relates that up to 40 days, the child is not yet fully formed, and after 40 days is when the child is formed. And there is a distinction that happens as a result of, as I will explain in a moment, and it's interesting. The Talmud said this 2,000 years ago. Even today, the modern science talks about the child's formation at 42 days. So it's very interesting that the Talmud gives that a very similar date, and perhaps the reason for the 40 days is because even the Talmud might have recognized that it's 42 days, but maybe in rare cases it happens a little bit earlier, so that's why it took it put it at 40 days. Perhaps, this is just my suggestion. Maybe the Talmud just chose 40 days for other reasons. But it's interesting to see the closeness of those two dates. Now, the issue of the 40 days comes up with regards to the following law, and it's personal to me because I'm a Kohen, and I'll explain. When it comes to a Kohen, so a Kohen, a priest, the Jewish people are divided into three groups: the Kohanim, the Levites, and the Israelites. a Kohen who is the priest that does the service in the Bet HaMikdash, in the temple. So a Kohen goes ahead and he eats, he's gifted by God certain foods of the sacrifices of the temple. Also truma is from all the grain. You have to go ahead and produce, and certain produce, you have to go ahead and separate a certain tithing. It's not actually tithing, but a certain amount that has to be separated and given to the Kohen in appreciation. This is a gift that God gives to the Kohen, that the Jewish people are supposed to give to the Kohen in appreciation for their services performed. Now, not only does the Kohen eat it, but his entire family eats it, including his daughter. I'm blessed with several daughters, so in the days of the Bet HaMikdash, today we don't have truma because we're not pure. Certain complications, although we do set aside truma, but we don't eat truma because we don't have the proper state of ritual purity. So the daughters of the Kohen also eat truma, but they only eat truma until they marry. If they marry a non-Kohen, in that case, they become part of their husband's family, and they cannot eat truma anymore. What happens if the Kohen's daughter becomes widowed? Her husband passes away. So here it depends. If her husband passed away before she bore any children to her husband, she goes back to her father's home, so to speak, and she could again eat the truma. This is in the Bible. This is a biblical law in the Torah. If, however, she has a child from her husband, in that case, she now cannot eat truma anymore. She is considered, because she bore a child to her husband, an Israelite. She's now part of the Israelite sort of tribe, and she cannot eat truma anymore. Now, the Talmud says like this, that if she lost her husband, she could immediately begin to eat truma. The question the Talmud asks is, perhaps she is pregnant and she doesn't know about it yet, meaning the fact that she's not showing signs of pregnancy does not mean she's not pregnant yet. And here the Talmud gives the following answer, that for the first 40 days, the fetus, the embryo, is considered just like a maya ba'alma. It's just water. Since it's not yet fully formed, which only happens after 40 days, it is maya ba'alma, it is water only, and therefore she can eat the truma. If after 40 days we find out that she's pregnant, so from that point on it's already noticeable, and that would change the situation. But up to 40 days we're not concerned about it, because even if she's carrying an embryo at that time, maya ba'alma, who it's just water. So here, this seems to indicate a distinction between before 40 days and after 40 days. The reason why this is not as simple as it sounds is because the first law that I mentioned, and I know this is all technical, so bear with me. The first law that I mentioned, that you could go ahead and be mechalel Shabbat, you could go ahead and transgress the Shabbat because of to save a fetus, does not seem to make any distinction of before 40 days and after 40 days. Now, why and how in the days of the Talmud would they preserve a fetus before 40 days? I don't know the answer to that. I have not yet seen that be addressed in the research that I've done in the last 24 hours. But as it pertains to our conversation, they don't make a distinction. And therefore, again, we have to rely on the difference between life and potential life. That the fetus, from the moment of conception, is viewed as potential life, and therefore it is granted certain call it rights or obligations towards that fetus. So that would be an explanation of a difference between before 40 days and after 40 days. And I will tell you where that has an effect in halacha. There are some halachic codifiers, modern halachic codifiers, that tell us that in the case where it is not life-threatening, but it is it causes serious illness to the mom, there are some halachic codifiers that today will allow an abortion up to 40 days. And as I said in the beginning, this is not a halachic ruling class, this is a discussion class. So because of this Talmudic discussion of the Truma, the daughter of the Kohen, there are some halachic authorities that will allow an abortion in the case where the mom's life is not in danger, but yet causes severe illness to the mom. They will allow it. Okay, I hope that's clear as far as discussion goes. There is another distinction, as I mentioned before, which is before the embryo is placed into the mother's womb. There's another interesting discussion with regards to this, and this has some serious halachic ramifications in today's world, which is there's a tshuva, there's a responsive from the Chacham Tzvi. Chacham Tzvi writes the following as it pertains to a golem, believe it or not. Many of us and many of you are probably familiar with the golem, with the Maral of Prague and the golem. And over there he has a discussion whether going ahead and killing a golem is considered the murder, and he brings evidence that only a child that is inserted or comes from the womb of a mom is considered a child. Other than that, it is not a child. And they use this responsa amongst others, but this is one of the authoritative sources in Jewish law for stem cell research of two stem cell research. Rav Moshe Tendler, for example, and I know when President Bush was deciding about stem cell research, the Orthodox Union as well sent him a letter, and Rav Moshe Tendler, based on his father-in-law, Rav Moshe Feinstein, and I want to mention an interesting discussion from Rav Moshe Feinstein, which is quite fascinating. So we'll mention that in a moment. Rav Moshe Tendler ruled that on that basis, that stem cell research from IVF is permitted, and not only permitted, he encouraged it because of its effect on certain diseases, whether it's Parkinson's and other diseases, that stem cell research has proven to be beneficial or even cure. So Reb Moshe Tendler has said that if it has not yet been inserted into a mother's womb, because as you know, stem cell research, or some of you might know, there are various areas of how you can do stem cell research. Some of it is just taken from an adult, and that for sure is not a problem. But here the question is that once the egg sort of is fertilized and it's viable, potentially, would that be considered killing sort of a potential life? And not everybody, but Rav Moshe Tendler and others have ruled that it is okay and it is advisable and commendable and so on, as long as it was not inserted. Two conditions basically: that it was not inserted into the womb of a mom, of a female, and number two is that it's less than 40 days. Here's the 40-day condition, meaning that if it's sitting in a lab and it has developed past 40 days, which is when the full formation happens, in that case it would be forbidden. So here you have the various different stages. Now I want to point out that Rav Moshe Feinstein has a very, very interesting point. He says, and a lot of these things have sort of also moral implications and the ramifications, as we will try to address as well as we get to some of the conclusions of this class. Rav Moshe Feinstein, who some of you might know the name, was definitely one of the top leading authorities of this last generation. He passed away, I believe, in the late 80s, mid to late 80s. Rav Moshe Feinstein goes into a long discussion, and he points out that under normal circumstances, listen to this, and how in today's world of back up. I know we've pointed this out several times. the Torah, as we saw in the article over here that we read from the OU, the Torah in general, religion in general, and especially Torah, does not view things from sort of our selfish rights perspective. I know this is a very, very passionate issue, a woman's rights versus the baby's life. And, if you're coming at it from a secular standpoint, there are very, very sort of valid points that you could make on both sides. There's very valid points. I know that in society today, the way, unfortunately, our society has become, everything becomes immediately extremely vicious, and no one even somewhat listens to the opinions of the other side, and it all becomes, you're a murderer, you don't care about kids, and you're a murderer because you don't care about mothers, and we right away take the most extreme positions and we attack each other. But Torah doesn't come from that perspective. Torah becomes from a perspective of what are my responsibilities, what are my obligations. And having said that, it's still a very sensitive subject, because the mother is the one who has to bear the responsibilities, the consequences, and so on. And yet we also have a child over here, or a potential child. So we'll get to that in a moment. But generally, Torah looks at things from a responsibility place as opposed to sort of a selfish place. That still can lend ourselves, as I said in the beginning of the class, of who makes that decision. We'll try to get to that. Now, Rav Moshe Feinstein says something very interesting, and again, that, as I said, affects the whole approach of how Torah versus secular society approaches these issues. Rav Moshe Feinstein says that, in general, for man and woman, husband and wife, to have intimate relations at a stage when they can have children, would, under strict Torah law, would have been forbidden. Before you throw anything on the screen, give me a moment. Would have been forbidden, if not for the mitzvah that the first mitzvah the Torah gives us, that you should be fruitful and multiply. Or as the prophet Isaiah says, God created us, l'sheves yitzara, He created us so that we could inhabit the world, to create a normal, functioning, proper society. Rav Moshe says, if not for that mitzvah, it would be forbidden to have intimate relations. Why? He says, because every single childbirth is inserting yourself, the mother, the mom, into a state of sakanat nefashot, of putting herself in a position of danger. Every childbirth, by Jewish law, is considered to be sakanat nefashot, which is why we do anything. We violate Shabbat as soon as a woman goes into labor, because it's considered life-threatening. And by law, by Torah law, by Jewish law, a person is not allowed to put themselves into a position, into a life-threatening position. You're not allowed to. You're not allowed to put yourself into life-threatening positions. And therefore, if not for the Torah giving us a mitzvah to be fruitful and to multiply, if not for the purpose of having children, you would not be allowed to have intimate relations when there is a potential child to be born. In other words, if you're 70 years old, it's a different story, but when you're 20 years old, 30 years old, and so on, this is what Rav Moshe concludes by Jewish law. And therefore, he says that just to have, as the OU uses over here, abortion on demand, would be a violation of the Torah principle. Besides the taking of potential life, it would also be a violation of the Torah principle of putting yourself in danger. Because to have a child, the Torah has permitted it. But to just have an abortion on demand, okay, we're not talking about when the life is in danger. Now, in terms of the difficult places, let's say, God forbid, there was rape. So here again, and I say this not as a halachic ruling, I say this for discussion. Here, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, here there are some authorities that permit up to 40 days. There are some authorities that permit it to have up to 72 hours, because before 72 hours is considered before there's even conception. And there are some authorities that do not permitted even at that stage. So I'm giving you the different opinions, discussions of this issue. So let me sort of conclude this issue as far as this discussion goes, and connect it to Mother's Day, which is being celebrated today. Although, of course, according to the Torah, one of the 10 commandments is honor your father and mother. Every single day is Mother's Day. There is no question. There's no way to be, as passionate as the issues are in this country, there's no question that abortion in general is forbidden in the Torah. There's no question about that. It's also very clear that when the mother's life is in danger, that abortion is permitted. Whose right is it to choose? The Torah doesn't really come from that perspective. The Torah is not about rights. I've said this again and again and again. The Torah is about responsibilities. In that case, what should the Supreme Court do? If you would ask the Torah what the Supreme Court should do, the Torah would say that abortion, other than, the Torah doesn't make these distinctions, meaning it's right under certain circumstances, it's wrong under the circumstances, as we just mentioned. It's right when the mother's life is in danger. When the mother is extremely ill, but her life is not in danger, as I said to you, some halachic authorities will permit it either up to 72 days or up to 40 days. I don't think there are any authorities that will permit it past that. Can you use stem cell research, for example? I'm not aware of any authority, I'm not aware, that will allow it, other than in the what they call embryonic stage, I think is what it's called, meaning before it is inserted in the mother's womb and before 40 days. After that, I don't think there are any authorities that permit it. We'll leave it at that. There's limited time, so limited discussion. So that's that. Now, to go to the sort of moral issue, my brother-in-law, Rabbi Denberg, wrote a nice article called Beyond Abortion. I recommend you read it if you can get hold of the article. And a lot of times we get carried away sort of with the end result, with the end stage, and we forget about the beginning stage. The beginning stage is that we need to address in two directions. On the one direction, we need to. All this came about in the last 60 years or 70 years. Before that, this wasn't much of an issue because of the value of life. It is the greatest value, the greatest merit for a mom to give birth to a child. This issue today, which is difficult and challenging, and again, I understand the passion on both sides, is partially as a result of where society finds itself, with much premarital sex, bearing children when there isn't a healthy family, there isn't a home where this child should be raised, which is why a lot of this difficulty arises. But if we go back to placing a high value on healthy families, on marriage, on true commitment in the marriage, where we don't have such a high divorce rate, and as a result of that, you have who knows how many children born into families where there isn't a healthy home and environment, that is what's creating a lot of these issues. So if we go to the core of this, it cannot be stressed. Societies can only survive and continue and be healthy when it is based on a healthy foundation. And the healthy foundation, as we have seen for thousands of years, and as told to us by our Creator, as given to us by Torah, is when you have a healthy mother and a healthy father, and you have good values, and you teach your kids good values. So in that case, shouldn't be any need for abortion. If God forbid There's health issues. If God forbid a child was 4, so first of all, there's the option of the first 72 hours, the first 4. There are various options, but that's not the norm. The norm is we value life, we cherish, and we praise our moms. There's nothing greater. I mean, look at the animal kingdom. The greatness of a lioness is she puts her life on the line to protect and raise her cubs. That's what she does. There's no option. God has given us the ability to make freedom of choice. But that's a gift that he gave us so that we make the right choice, not that we use that ability of freedom of choice, which is considered godlike, not that we use that ability in order to make the wrong choices. So, irregardless of who should have the right to choose, whether it's government, whether it's the mother, the woman, which is somewhat an independent discussion, not totally, but somewhat. But nevertheless, the right choice should be that there is nothing greater than raising a child, and I say in a healthy home. I know there are societal issues and there are complications, and what happens if it's in a home where this child that is born will not have health. These are very good questions, and therefore I would we must address the core of the issue. At the same time, if we find a situation where a mom has to make the decision to give birth to that child because she doesn't have a partner that could help her, we as a society, again, whether it's government, whether it's the synagogues or other charitable organizations and so on, we must provide as much support as we can to those families. Starting with family. Sometimes it's not necessarily government, which then becomes has its challenges. Family, loving family, caring family. We need to understand how precious life is. How many children that were born in unfortunate circumstances grew up to be great people. And even if you're going to give me the counter argument that some are being born and unfortunately turn into be criminals and so on, that can be resolved. It does not have to be resolved by taking the life. It could be resolved by highlighting and treating our mothers that give birth into heroes as they should be. They're providing life, and give them the love and support that we need to give them. That's where the discussion should be. The discussion should not be based around terminating life or potential life. The discussion should be based on how do we support and bring out the potential. It's the greatest gift. How many women out there sadly and tragically cannot even have children and are crying and begging for life? So that's where the Torah spirit is. The Torah's approaches. Life is precious. A child is the most precious thing. A mother is the most precious thing. We have to treat our mothers like heroes, value life. There are circumstances, extenuating circumstances, where an abortion can happen, as discussed in great detail in this class, in a discussion, not as a halachic ruling. May Hashem, I will also conclude with this. The Talmud says that the coming of Mashiach, the coming of the righteous Messiah, as mentioned in the prophets, the Talmud has a statement, will occur when until all the souls that are in this holding place called guf, it's a certain oitzer, says Rashi, a certain storage where souls are kept. And only after all these souls come down into this world will Mashiach come. And I think that perhaps, in addition to maybe the plain meaning of the Talmud, the deeper meaning is that when that happens, when we value each child, each fetus, when we value it to the utmost, that's when redemption will come, because that shows what kind of society, that's a reflection of society, when we value life to the utmost. So that is the thought that we have today. Thank you for listening. Please share so that we could spread the Torah's approach to such a valuable subject. I suspect that I will also get opposing opinions, and which is okay, which is fine, as long as it's done respectfully, properly. And please do give me your feedback, and may Hashem give us all blessing, Give all mothers blessing, our mother's blessing, a good life. Everybody have a fantastic week.